Did a lot of writing about it in my poems. I also was in California. I wrote a few things about that experience as I taught for the Indian Service. And then I was here in Oklahoma. After those 10 years, the Indian Service had me be at the Quapaw Indian Agency. So that's a little bit about my work history. My interest in writing and our parents, all of the children participated in things, and we learned an appreciation for literature, art, music, and it stayed with us. My mother was trained by Nicholas Longworth. She went to Maple Hill Seminary, very unusual for women of that time, even today in the 20s. And my father attended college also in Ohio. So they encouraged us to learn, and I've been an avid reader all my life. My writing, I started when I was here at this Indian school this thing's not so good.
It looks fuzzy.
And when I was in the Indian school in their publication. And later on, when I tried to get some national publishing, it didn't happen, so I sent it to the Indian School newspaper at Shiloko and at Neosho, and it got some circulation, and it was poetry. And I also had it in the Strums, Oklahoma magazine, or Statehood magazine, and that's where I began to do some publishing. When I submitted things to national publication and it was refused, I started writing under the name Hinko instead of BNO. I was, as an agent, my father had died, so I went to work, and there was a period there where I was actively writing. I was involved in listening to the stories of all the people that came into the agency that I ran into, because I'm sorry if I'm a little nervous, but I like meeting people, but I'm very uncomfortable in a large crowd. I would listen to their stories and I would try to incorporate it into poetry. And Aunt Kitty Gray Eyes and Grandma Brown were pretty amazing storytellers. Now, Grandma Brown didn't speak English. She refused to. She understood it, but she refused to. I'll give you a story. When Benjamin Harrison was considering running for office, I went into the sitting room where Aunt Kitty and Grandma were, and Aunt Kitty says, "Grandma wants to know who this person, Harris, he is that's running for office, or they're thinking of making president," is what she said. And I said, "Well, Grandma knows that's the grandson of her old friend Harupsi." And Grandma's eyes snapped, and she said, "Huh, no good." And she went off and whined out that either is unrepeatable or I didn't understand. It turns out that Grandma had been captured in the War of 1812 by his grandfather and imprisoned. So she was not happy about that. So Kitty Gray Eyes used to tell me stories, and if you've read the Tales of the Bark Lodge, you know that I have an old aunt in there, and that's Aunt Kitty. She told me a lot of those stories, and I made them into the literary best that I could. One time, Chief Tarhi, when I was young, he came to our house, and he said, he told Mom, he told Mary Williams, he said, Mary Williams Walker, Mama, he told her, "Well, he don't look much like a Wyandotte, but I guess he'll always stay with his people." And I've been busy learning about and writing about the history of our people, and that's what I've been doing. When my mother died, I moved back home. I was gone for a while because my younger brother Isaac and his wife Eva Bell were living there. And Eva Bell was such a hateful thing. She would just drive my mother to distraction, and I couldn't take it. And when Isaac said he was going to build, I was so happy because I wanted to move home, raise some chickens and ducks, and be with Mama. So anyway, I managed to be back home after Mama died, and I took care of Aunt Mary McKee. Actually, she was my cousin, but she was so old, she was like an aunt to me, too. And Mary McKee used to go back and forth, and her name was Tarima. It was carrying a pond on her back, and her nickname was Turtle. And she would go to Canada to her property, which, if you are familiar with it, she had some problems getting, but she eventually got her land, and she would go there and come back. But late in her life, she needed care. And so she lived here in the Walker Place, and I took care of her for the rest of her life. And about that time, I took about a 4-year leave from my work, and that's when I composed Tales of the Bark Lodge and some other stories. That's where I actually began writing stories and trying to get them published.